私はベティ、ダルシス帝国ランス将軍の妹ですわ。あなた様をずっとお待ちしておりましたの。
Hello everyone, Z808 here, and this is the start of my How to Build Heroes guides. I'm not going to pretend I know everything, so everything in my guides will be based on my own research and personal experience. Please use these guides as a simple reference and not as the absolute way of building your heroes. In order to have some consistency, I will use the 4 following topics for each guide. First, we'll look at what role will this hero have either in PvP and or PvE if any. Second, we'll look at the hero's talent and recommended skill set for the role mentioned. Third, we'll be looking at recommended gears, enchants, mastery enchants, and soldiers. Finally, the 4th topic we'll be looking at is some examples of game footage if it's available. So for part 1, today we're going to talk about Betty, and this has been long overdue as number of subscribers and friends, guildmates has asked me about, hey, how do you build your hero, your Betty, and how do you normally use her? So let's get a little bit about the history of where it came, how Betty was used. So when she was first released, many thought of her as a tank. However, due to her unable to reduce damage naturally and only to guard physical attacks, she didn't really perform too well. Where she really shines is her ability to counter AoE meta by dealing a fixed damage that cannot be immunized. And in addition, with the release of her exclusive helmet and her 3C skill, she has completely gotten from a passive hero to become more of a balance between what I called reactive aggressive and proactive aggressive playstyle. She shines the most when paired with a strong tank such as Hilda or Albedo for a tank push playstyle. Finally, with the introduction of SP Elwyn recently and Burn 3C coming out in June, Betty should have no issues with getting a faction buff, which was another reason why she was sitting on the sidelines. So let's take a look at Betty herself. Starting with her talent, which is called Sword Rem. When AoE damage is taken, decreased by 30%. So herself doesn't take as much AoE damage. When a friendly unit within a 3 block radius, which is very large, is attacked by the enemy, deals fixed damage to the attacker equal to Betty's attack 1 time. This effect ignores immunity. So this is the part where it is super important. It ignores immunity and has a 30% chance to apply 1 random debuff, then increase your attack and magic defense by 20% for 2 turns. So whenever one of her allies or herself gets attacked, she actually gets a pretty decent attack buff. That's really, really big. Now, what makes Betty's unique is that this specific talent, and as I mentioned a little earlier, she's the only actually that unit that I can think of that can deal fixed damage to opponents that cannot be immunized in retaliation. So basically, brings the words meaning you touch me, I touch you back. Now furthermore, she also has a chance to give the attacker that debuff that I mentioned a little bit earlier, right? There's a 30% chance. Now this is not that high. However, the trick with this one is that not only does it do it once. So what I mean is that if the attacker hits 5 allies, including Betty, there is 30% chance the attacker may get the debuff. And the best part of it is not only the debuff, but this specific one times attack that cannot be immunized, fixed damage, it'll be multiplied to the attacker. So for example, if Shelfanio or Reen AoE the entire team, there's a really good chance, and if you have really high attacks, there is a good chance they might kill themselves or get very close to death. And this allows her to be a super counter to AoE teams. Furthermore, her exclusive helmet, which is fixed damage that will increase as HP decreases up to a maximum of 30%. So that's huge. So as she loses life, the damage that the fixed damage she deal from her talent actually increases. So if you think about that, that's like, wow, she can literally do 10,000 plus fixed damage when she's below 50% or more. And not to really forget, but her talent, this debuff that we mentioned a little bit earlier, it's one of the only people that can actually give a heal reversal as part of the debuff, which is extremely powerful because there's not that many heroes that can actually do that. I mean, just off the top of my head, I think only Reen, Listel, Betty, and I think what was it? The Sonya's 3C. So out of all the heroes that's out there, she is one of the very few that is able to apply the heal reversal debuff. And as I mentioned earlier, with the release of her 3C skill, she's not able to actively do a 2-ring AoE attack similar to Sword Dance. Now this attack also applies a cannot be healed debuff. So this is the one that we're talking specifically. So it's Blade Storm, couple components to it. So the passive part is that it blocks fatal AoE skill damage. So even if she have 1% life, and they don't have fixed damage, if they do an AoE attack to her and she dies, she will not die and revive, and she have 3 times per battle to do that. And also, in addition to her talent, the passive for her 3C is that after a friendly unit within talent range is attacked, the attacker and 2 enemies within 3 blocks are afflicted with the effect damage dealt decreased by 15%, and it lasts 1 turn. So when the enemy, this makes her a super debuffer, and also gives her the chance to eliminate some of those debuff immunity buffs that is given by Rosen Seal. So as the attacker attack her or her team, it kind of spreads and eliminates some of those buff immunity. So that's really nice. And the other part is, the active part is that the physical damage deals 0.3 AoE damage to all enemies within 2 ring radius, and in addition to that, deals a fixed damage equal to 1 times Betty attack, which also renders the unable to healing, which is the heal block, and not only 1 turn, but it's actually 2 turns. That is huge. That is huge. And what's more fun is that any type of fixed damage is actually it can be, as she loses HP, increased to a maximum of 30% damage. So I know that's a lot of math and calculation and all that goes on, but basically, as she loses life, I believe any time she loses below 50% or more, I don't have the exact number, but based on my past experience, it seems that whenever she's below 50% or more, she activates this 30%, up to 30%. So I think it's maybe 10, 20, 30% threshold, and it deals crazy amount of damage. Crazy amount of damage. And next, let's take a look at her skills. But to be honest, her skill selection really suck. Really sucks. And for the recommended role I mentioned earlier, there's really only 3 skills you should ever use, and this is what you see. So it's the 3C that we mentioned earlier. The passive, which is the sword, what we call sword breath. After attacking an enemy, deals is 0.1 AoE damage to all enemies within 1 circle. And this is really nice, and also with her, it has synergy with her helmet. It does increase the damage as well. And what's so great about this is that not only does it do some additional damage, but let's just say you fighting a bracer or swordsmith metal SP Elwyn, after you take off the first life, and she also does this 0.1 AoE damage, it will actually kill him completely off. So it's really nice. And the third skill is called Savage Attack, which is very close to one of the stun moves that like Bernhardt can use, except this one deals 1.2 damage. So she doesn't really have any other attack skill, so 1.2 damage is not that high, but is better than nothing. However, the bonus for this one is that when you're on a defensive terrain, it can cast stun before the battle begins and it lasts 1 turn. So unfortunately, if you can't find any defensive terrain, it's just in the 1.2 times attack. And more often than not, based on my experience, I really haven't been able to take advantage of the stun. Not as often as I hope I was able to. But aside from that, I mean, the rest of her other skills are really crap. I mean, it's just, I feel it's useless. And we're not going to talk about any of her tanking skills, because as a tank, my personal opinion is that she doesn't really do a good job. Can she tank a little? Yes, but can she replace a real tank like Hilda or Albedo or even Landius? Absolutely not. But that's, again, just my opinion. And if you're going to use her as a passive aggressive tank push support, never bring Iron Fist unless you want a quick death or you just want to be silly, because you don't want to be taking any hits for anybody. You want to be there and proc her talent and the passive on her 3C. Okay, moving on to part 3. Now, what class should she be? So there's a couple options. There is the Empress, which she actually have a little bit higher defense compared to her Swordmaster class. The Swordmaster class is actually a little bit higher on the overall attack. So that's and since we're gonna be want her proc her talent as much as possible, I recommend using the Swordmaster, the middle line here. And there's actually another reason for that. And the reason for that is this right here. So if you look at her bonds, so this is Betty here. So if you look at her heart bond specifically, for her level 7, when hero's class is Swordmaster, AoE damage is increased by 10%. So this is going to help her 3C because it is AoE damage, and 10% is quite significant when you think about it and how much damage she can do as it adds up. So in addition, I believe the passive, that 0.1 damage, although it's not a lot, but that, again, I think all of those are included in that bonus to that 10%. So definitely recommend using her as the Swordmaster class. Swordmaster. Okay, moving on. Now as for gears, this is my recommendation. Again, you may not have the exact same gears available, but let me explain why I decided to go with this. So because of her 3C, she has a 2 ring. If you use Balance Blade, it comes 3 rings, and kind of think of it like Leonhardt's that huge AoE. So 3 ring is really big, and not only does it make her 3C gets bigger, her sword breath also goes from 1 ring to 2 rings, so that also helps do additional damage. And of course, if you don't have a Balanced Blade, you can use blood sword hunting, which actually gives her a little bit better attack, and also an additional opportunity to do fixed damage. So that's another good option there. And I believe you can use Demon Blade for if she procs in a crit to remove a buff from the opponent, but her overall crit chance is not that high. So personally, I decided to go with the Balanced Blade, which makes it go 3 rings. Definitely my favorite. Carbon fiber armor has excellent synergy because it gives her a good defense from the start, but when unit HP is below 50%, attack and skill goes up by 8%. And that has synergy with her exclusive, because her exclusive is that as she loses HP, her fixed damage goes up. So if not only does she get more fixed damage, her attack also goes up, which increases that fixed damage. So these 2 items have excellent synergy. That's why I highly recommend carbon fiber armor. Now for the accessory, it's a toss, but this is the reason why I recommend the Overlord Badge is due to the stat increases for overall, but most importantly, it prevents her from being debuffed attack and mobility. And again, her talent is dependent on the amount of attack that she has. So basically, if her attack is unable to be debuffed, then her ability to do counterattack is huge. It's huge. So you don't have to worry too much when facing, for example, Bozo or Reen and other character that can do debuff to attack. Now others can also argue that hey, maybe Apex boots might be a good for extra mobility. However, ideally you want to be playing what I call a tank push team, and she normally spend most of her time besides or behind your tank anyways. And of course, if you don't have an Overlord Badge or Apex boots, literally any attack up accessory is fine. It's totally fine. Now, as for enchants, I went with Clock, and trust me, Clock. If you're 3C clocks, it's just GG. It's GG. If you clock and you don't die and you use your 3C twice, a lot of things are just gonna fall apart. And also keep in mind your other attack ability, the Savage attack, can also be clocked. So there's really no reason to go with anything else. However, of course, there is an option to go with Breeze. If you already have other gears that has nice Breeze enchant. And then I think there are some unique ways of using Full Moon. I believe one of my guildmates who uses Betty as well went with Full Moon for a very unique high attack build, even when she is at full HP. But again, for me, Clock 3C is just insane. It's just insane. Highly recommended. Now for Mastery enchant, pretty straightforward. HP, attack, defense across the board. For Arena enchants, however, there's a couple options. I still recommend HP, attack, defense for any build for for this role. However, you can go either with a crit chance reduction and crit damage reduction, so that she's always alive and somewhat healthy. But for me, it looks really weird, because why am I going with crit chance and crit damage is because of the accessory, that enchant that I got. I did get some crit chance here, so I figured that I might as well take advantage of that. But normally, yeah, you wouldn't really go with those enchants, but I'll let you be the judge of that. But basically, for everything else, you want to go HP, attack, defense on the normal master enchant, and arena you can kind of play around with what makes most sense for you. As for soldiers, there's a couple options. She doesn't really have amazing soldiers, and if you look at her, the boost, it's obvious that it's not really meant for a single attack. For boost is only 25%, but the defense is quite high, as well as magic defense. Typically, if you are only going to build one soldier, crystal molders is what I recommend. However, she can also use Highland Warriors and Guardian Infantry when she wants to deal with specific opponent who are using Lancers or Infantry, and but most of the time right now, to kind of deal with SP Elwyn or any other horse units, Crystal Molder or Stone Colossus is definitely the way to go. Okay, so we're coming towards the end of the how to build guide. Now, as far as examples of of Betty and how to use them, I believe I have shared quite a number of Betty videos in the past. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the link to those videos in the description below, so that you can view and get a better idea of what they are. However, I do want to feature one more game that I haven't posted in the past. It is a friendly Apex game I had with the guildmate. He's a very strong player, but I got lucky in the team composition, and I just want to see kind of highlight what she can do in a tank push team, and also how dangerous she can be. So let me see if I can find the video here. It is with my good friend Alex DK. Here, Betty. I'm gonna go ahead and skip the pig ban. Pretty straightforward. But what I want to do is I want to highlight the team that we have ended up with. So on my side, again, pretty typical tank push. I got Hilda, filling around with Light of Genesis, got Betty, got Luna, and then I have Liana. So technically, I don't have an actual faction buff for Betty. However, I believe I had Gospel for her, so which was fine, because all I really want to do is give her higher attack. On my opponent's team, I have Hilda. I have he has Diana for healer, very strong, and Lanford, which is a good counter to Hilda. And then we also have SP Elwyn, and of course Rachel. Okay, so let's see how it goes. I'm gonna go ahead and let both sides get a little closer and see how we do. A lot of crazy breezes there. And Lanford is actually a very strong hero when you're going tank push, because the aura gives 15% to all stats. So kind of keep that in mind. And generally, he's a sword that can hit really hard on any Lancer tank as well. So both of us are just kind of dancing around and prepping and getting ready. So at this point, Betty is still hasn't gotten any crazy attacks buffs yet, but she did gain her 20% from her talent because Hilda got attacked. But if you look at what happened there, why did they not get any of the debuffs? Oh, okay. So this is another really interesting thing to kind of keep in mind is, I believe, of Lanford's exclusive, which basically is saying if you are in mixed troops and within aura range, they don't get the debuff. And I think that's the reason why I don't see the debuff on them. I'm not sure why Elwyn didn't get it though. But anyways, let's keep going. Putting some pressure on the opponent. And the opponent heals right back up. So keep in mind right now my Betty still does not have a faction buff or an attack up buff. But even so, she still did create decent amount of reflective damage as her allies gets hit. And here comes Betty 3C. Still did decent. See, the crit did 10,000, and with the fixed damage and another fixed damage, actually killed off Rachel there and damaging on the other characters. And keep in mind this is horror, so that SP Awa doesn't take as much damage, but still. See, every time they attack someone's ally, she counters attack and slowly grinds them down. Slowly grinds them down. Just like that. Not a whole lot, but it adds up. You'd be surprised. And the debuff that she kind of spreads around, if Lanford wasn't there, truly makes it difficult for the enemy to do some real damage to you. So yeah, my opponent wasn't, her tank is down and realized that there's not much you can do. That's just another typical fight of how Betty can really do some crazy damage and help the team. She's not meant to be used as a one shot and kind of destroy the entire enemy's team. However, is those little things that really add up, and that's what make her super strong, trust me. And especially with all the new heroes that's coming up for season 7, I believe, if you look at with Himiko and Kruger, Vincent, I mean all those characters that's coming up in the near future are going to be AoE, so Betty is going to be super strong. Love to hear your thoughts on my build for Betty, and if you please share what your thoughts are below in the comments below. And you can see my stats clearly here. I believe if I'm fully buffed, faction buff and everything, my attack can get up to roughly about 1500, which is not too bad. I believe my friend was able to get up to about 1700 attack, but you gotta have some crazy enchants to be able to do that. But that's it. Thank you for joining me today on how to build guide. I know it's a little rough on the edges, but I hope to be able to provide you with more information on more heroes. The next couple I'm gonna be doing will be on Renata and Burn, Oman Burn, and Emmerich. But let's see what order we'll be able to release that. Thank you again for joining me today. And if you like the content and if you want to receive and see more content from me in the future, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Take care and aloha.